When I spoke to Edward, I think the whole idea was I would cover the political history of Ghana and how we kind of reached this moment whereby slum politics is actually going to be a defining, in my opinion, factor of the up-and-coming elections. I want to really be terribly brief rather than take up too much of your time. Obviously, as we all know, Ghana's democracy began well beyond the independence. Kwame Nkrumah was elected in 1949, I believe, to begin with, and 51. Sorry, I apologise. I've got an expert in the front here. I feel nervous now. I'm trying to go off script as well. And so, effectively, that's where I want to begin in terms of before independence and what it looked like before then, and how we got to here now. Just to be very clear, Ghana has 24 political parties officially registered at the Electoral Commission. It can adequately be argued, however, that all of these parties fit within two main traditions, either the Nkrumahist tradition or the Dankobusia tradition. To make it clear, Nkrumah would be the left wing and Dankobusia would be the right wing. And therefore it can be argued that in the political history of Ghana, there's only ever been really two parties. Ghana's democratic history, like I said, precedes its independence, and as many of you will know, Kwame Nkrumah was Prime Minister of the Gold Coast in February 1951 on the ticket of the Convention People's Party, whose slogan at the time was self-governance now versus the UGCC's self-governance at the best possible time. Impatient Kwame Nkrumah always was. But Nkrumah beat the UGCC as an organisation, and this mainly came from his grassroots popularity. He managed to mobilise the farmers, the youth, the market women up against the British at the time, and that's what stood in good stead for him to become Prime Minister. The UGCC's plans, however, what they were selling for the people of Ghana, like I said, was independence in the best possible time, a government that was run mainly by the educated elite rather than just relying on the traditional National Legislative Assembly at the time. And so you could say that governance of social elitism and social capital gained from one's position in the traditional cultural hierarchy was being circumvented by the idea of governance by educational elitism. Those who were deemed more capable to conceptualize the complexity of governance and to handle the Herculean task which presented itself to a new African nation. Those who were most capable were the ones who the UGCC felt should be there. In few cases, there would be an overlap in terms of those who were educated coming from traditional backgrounds, being sons of chiefs or chiefs themselves. However, that was not their focus. The UGCC's main focus was about educational elitism. Under Kwame Nkrumah, the political infrastructure was greatly centralized, and this is what Ghana has been fighting for a number of decades, to get back to a decentralized system. When Ghana first became a republic, the country actually turned into a unicameral presidential system under a one-party state. And eventually, Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in a peaceful coup whilst he was in China in 1966. And this was by the armed forces and the police force combined. This obviously marked an end to one-party state, but then it threw Ghana into arguably a political turmoil of rolling, how may we say it, military coups after military coups, and the switch of power at the top rather than anything really changing for the people at the bottom. So we saw the National Liberation Council headed by Lieutenant General Accra in 1966. And then he was obviously overtaken by Lieutenant General Afrifa, who also then became the chairman of the NLC and then also sat on a 3-man presidential commission. And then they oversaw the transition yet again back into democracy. The idea that power does need to lie with the people was very much an agitation of the people. Kofi Busia with the Progress Party became the Prime Minister, and this was between 69 to 72 under Edward Kufuor-Addo, who is the father of the current Nana Akufo-Addo. And as we saw in that situation, they were trying to bring in policies of austerity, take control of the economy, and this is where clearly it did not sell well with the people. The people felt that Busia had effectively betrayed them, because whereby before education was, let's say, free, they were introducing student loans. And we all know here in the UK, when you up the price of education, the students revolt. But yeah, so that's basically what happened in the Second Republic as well. So we had a let's say, a situation whereby there was a push for bottom-up politics, and yet again, because it was not sitting well with the people, another military coup in 72, and that was by Kutu Achampong. Kutu Achampong was there for a number of years. He was overthrown 78 until 79, where Jerry John Rawlings came through. And so naturally, like I said earlier, the top-down politics of the change of power within the police force, the military often deciding the king in Ghanaian politics was the main problem. Decentralization and the idea of, I guess, Alhaji and chief and boss now having more power at the bottom came through towards the end of the PNDC's time in governance. The first 6 years, Jerry John Rawlings had a very strong hold on how the country was being run. He was known as chairman at the time, but there was a speech in 1988 by the man who's considered, let's say, the grandfather of the MPP fight back, I guess, in 1988, and he effectively called out the situation of the culture of silence in Ghana, and this was going to threaten Chairman Rawlings's power and hold on the state, and so he had to change. And obviously the IMF was there, the World Bank were there to also put pressure on him to change, and that's where we found the creation of the MMDAs. And in that situation, obviously, it wasn't really, let's say, the heart of Chairman Rawlings was not entirely in it, because as you are a military junta, the most important thing is to keep that power within you. But decentralization, because the AFRC and the PNDC had come off the back of probity and accountability, decentralization had to be the next step, and the MMDAs were created. But their funds, as has been said before, are very small. The ability to tap into them is very, very weak. You still have to go back to the centre for that ability, and that is where the hindrance is for development in different areas in Ghana, and that is what is actually being changed on the ground right now. There's a lot of discussion as to how to strengthen MMDAs, how to perhaps weaken the ties between the president and the chief executives of the MMDAs, but effectively it hasn't yet taken off in the way that we are expecting it to, and perhaps that's because we have that informal political economy, at the bottom, that is kind of lessening the effect of it, as a feeling, knowing that it's not working, but there are people to supplement it. It's in Ghana, if electricity doesn't work, people buy a generator. If you don't have running water, you just purchase for your polytank. And I guess that this is the same type of situation whereby that political system is not working, but there are other people there to circumvent it for the sake of the parties. And I mean, I said I was going to be very brief, and I've literally tried to run through from 1951 up to 2015, but that is effectively the foundation upon which Ghana is sitting on, and the foundation upon which slum politics will have to contend with. And I imagine from my experiences in Ghana after living there for 2 years that, effectively, slum politics definitely will be, or at least the politics you're talking about, I should rather say, will be very important, definitely in these elections. But there will be the formal pushback from the civil society organisations to strengthen the links between the MMDA's powers to affect change and to start social engineering effectively. With the hope of not exploiting tribal differences, but rather to promote this nation-building project that never really got finished to begin with. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully we'll just have questions.